Sangaila, Yake Sutat. Good day, everyone. Hawa Gunashish. Thank you for joining us on this week's Lunchtime Chats with Tlingit Haida. Today is our Tlingit Haida Tribal Business Corporation. My name is Ronald Fulgamon, and I serve as the Chief Operating Officer for Tlingit Haida. It's my honor today to be joined by Tlingit Haida Tribal Business Corporation. Tlingit Haida has been involved in these lunchtime chats for several months now, and it's our opportunity to highlight our activities here at the tribe, our different departments, organizations. Today, we'll be talking about our subsidiary and its recent activities to give our citizens a chance to know what's happening at the tribe, what services are available, and to ask questions and get more information. So this week, our lunchtime chat again will inform us on information from the Tlingit Haida Tribal Business Corporations. We are going to be talking about how it was established, what's its functions and how it operates, and what we hope to accomplish to provide for our tribal citizens. So first, I'd like to go to our second Vice President, Will Micklin, and President Richard Reinhardt or CEO Richard Reinhardt of the Tlingit Haida Tribal Business Corporation for introduction.
Thank you, Rold. Duane kaknakle yo hatuasak, tashi yo hatuasak, yechna hatsati, kiksadi ayahat, gagan hid ayahat, tidhan yadi hatsati, stikin kwan ayahat. A lot of you know me from Sea Alaska Corporation, but prior to that, I had over 20 years business experience before coming to Sea Alaska. And after leaving there as their CFO about a dozen years ago, I was the CEO for the Nisqually Tribe's business enterprise prior to starting THTBC 7 years ago. Will?
Shinget Shanach Yanyanish Yuhat Duasak. Yuhat Kua Dleka Shanach Will Micklin. Hatsu Shanaya. Tangash nach hatsate, tekwadi ayachat, kats hit doasak naha kahidi, tleka yadi ayachat, kanakadi dachkan ayachat, ka San Francisco, hihat yati yidat, gulchish. My name is Will Micklin. My Tlingit name is Yanyanish. I'm second vice president for Tlingit Haida, having served on the Executive Council since 2008 and as Assembly member since 1994. I am employed as CEO for a federally recognized tribe in California since 1995 and represent the San Francisco community. Thank you.
Hello, Vice President Micklin and CEO Reinhardt. We appreciate that you've joined us today. And Richard, can you please describe for us Tlingit Haida Tribal Business Corporation's business activities and locations?
Sure, I'll be real brief on this slide. Tlingit Haida Tribal Business Corporation is a government services contracting business wholly owned by the Central Council, Tlingit Haida Indian Tribes of Alaska, or Tlingit Haida. With a proven track record for best-in-class service on government contracts globally, we currently operate in 20 states, 4 different countries, and have over 1,400 employees.
Thank you, Richard. Will, can you describe for us why and how Tlingit Haida Tribal Business Corporation was formed?
Thanks, Raul. THTBC was formed for 2 primary reasons. First, to diversify the Tlingit Haida trust funds from investments solely in equity and bond markets, where funds are subject to market volatility, the ups and downs of the market, and is limited in growth of earnings. And we intended to change that by this diversification to invest in ownership of an operating business. And second, our intention was to use the potential greater earnings we could earn through operating a business for the benefit of our tribal citizens wherever they reside without encumbrances on use of those funds that otherwise apply to federal Indian program funds.
So Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, Roll, just to answer about how it was formed. THTBC holds a federal charter approved by the Secretary of Interior that is provided through a provision of the Indian Reorganization Act of 1934 and 1936 as applied to Alaska tribes. Such Indian Reorganization Act corporations are exempt from taxation. They possess the sovereign immunity of Tlingit and Haida as an arm of the tribe and provide for non-recourse from liabilities from THTBC to Tlingit and Haida assets. So THTBC operates as a holding company. Its subsidiaries operate businesses under the management of the board of directors and its chief executive officer, Richard Reinhardt. Thank you, Roll.
Thank you, Will. I appreciate that. And while we're on that topic, can we talk about THTBC's governance? We know that it's governed by a board of directors, but could you tell our viewers a little bit more about the board of directors?
Thanks, Roald. So the board is our president, Richard J. Peterson, and he brings with him his extensive experience in federal contracting through Kasan, his home village. Richard Reinhardt, of course, you heard his vast experience in business operations and development, myself, and then we have two what would be outside directors or non-native directors. Ronald Fulgamon is a retired United States Air Force general who served as the 15th Chief of Staff of the Air Force from 1994 to 1997. And before that is Commanding General, United States Transportation Command from 92 to 94. And during his tenure, he introduced a code of conduct for airmen that remains in use today. That's called the Air Force Core Values that demands integrity first, service before self, and excellence in all we do. That certainly applies to THTBC. And Janet Oliver, our other outside director, is a skilled and knowledgeable business executive with a wide range of career experience in federal government sales and operations in the US, Europe, Central Asia, and Middle East. Her career achievements are evidenced by a strong record of increasing sales and improving teams in every company where she has worked, and we have experienced that same improvement in performance since she joined the board. Thank you, Roel.
Thank you, Will. For both of you, could you describe THTBC's performance since startup? And maybe while you're doing that, we'd like to hear a little bit about the executive team for THTBC and their contributions to that superior performance.
Thank you, Roald. I'll start on that. THTBC was formed by the Executive Council in 2010. After Tribal Assembly in 2014, I was their first and only employee. We started out as a small janitorial company in Seattle, but 5 years ago in June of 2016, I think actually June 15th, so next week, we acquired Kira. The founder, Carlos Garcia, and the management team agreed to stay on, and we have grown exponentially since then. When THTBC acquired Kira, THTBC was 1% the size it is today. Kira was only 1/3 the size it is today. Profits were only 1/6 of what they are today. Simply stated, it's been an excellent transaction. To date, the executive team has delivered excellent results. Revenue and net income are at record levels, and both are growing. Our performance rating scores on our existing contracts are very good. Our win rate on proposals is double the industry standard, and our cost of proposals is half the industry average. Our DCAA audits are squeaky clean. We have no outstanding lawsuits, and unlike most of our competitors, we have no blemishes on our record. Our executives deserve a tremendous amount of recognition and credit for their accomplishments, both individually and as a well-functioning team.
So does THTBC then hold a competitive advantage in our federal contracting in its business models or in its employees?
Yes, and I was going to describe that a little later, but basically, and so I may repeat myself, our business model is simple. We have top quality. We seek excellence in everything we do. And when I say that, the government has a rating system called a CPARS rating, and there's like 5 major areas. We have, in some of our contracts, some of our biggest contracts, we've held exceptional in all 5 categories for the last 4 years in a row. Most all the other ones are a mixture of very good and exceptional ratings, and we really try to get exceptional on everything that we do. That's our goal. It's more important than our short-term profits. Second is we keep our costs really, really low. I don't know, I could almost show you a quick tour of my office, but we have our offices in hub zones. We keep our costs down, and we're very lean in our operations at our various contract sites. So the 2 things together create a value proposition that really our competitors would have a hard time matching. And then when you throw in on top of that we have the various SBA certifications, top secret clearance and things like that, we have a very strong proposition.
Enrolled.
Go ahead, Will.
I would like to add that at the top level, Richard is describing that the THTBC has met or exceeded its plan for contract acquisition, for operations, and for growth in each of its years of operation. And that means that we've met or exceeded our plan. That record of performance allows THTBC, has allowed it to retire its acquisition debt, to fund new growth organically without taking on new debt, and to begin returning profits back to Tlingit Haida in the near term. All this, I think, is attributable to all of those business attributes that Richard described, but at the core of it is our employees. And one thing I hear consistently from the employees, from the executives down to the machinists and laborers and everyone at the ground level, is how proud they are by their work to contribute to the general welfare of Tlingit Haida, to our native citizens, and to address those unmet needs that we are attempting to address through generating revenues through THTBC. It's exceedingly important, number one, to have your employees to be expert in what they do, to have superlative performance, but also to be dedicated to the business and the mission of the business, but even more so that they are so expressively dedicated to the mission, needs, and purpose of Tlingit Haida is exceptional. And I think that underlies most everything that we accomplish. Thank you.
For that, Will. I appreciate it. And Richard, can you talk about federal contracting and how the U.S. Small Business Administration programs benefit THTBC?
Sure. And I'll be kind of brief on this part, and we'll talk about it a little more, I'm sure. The Small Business Administration has programs that set up contracting goals with other federal agencies working with small business. They accomplish this through what they call set-asides in certain categories of small business. Some of those might be like 8A, Hub Zone, women-owned business, service disabled veteran-owned business, et cetera. At THTBC, we have a number of subsidiaries that are certified by the SBA. And we have won contracts on set-asides, but most of our work has been won through open competition.
For that. And Will, you began to describe it a little bit, but could you describe a little bit more about the THTBC business model and its advantages?
Thank you, Roland. So, first I'll describe that the THTBC core business model is striving for excellence and providing top quality services. That as the top level goal is extremely important, that all of our employees and key executives buy into this, is essential in a very competitive market, which federal contracting is incredibly competitive, and we're competing against not just big national corporations, but multinational corporations. So this is most important. Second, as Richard described, we keep costs down. We have low overhead and lean operations, and this creates significant value for our customers that other competitors can't match. That means that we can accomplish the duties and the performance requirements under a contract at less cost to the contracting agency, and helps them accomplish their mission without having to dedicate their employees to the task. The business model overall is to engage in federal defense contracting using available preference programs that set aside a percentage of federal contract awards to small businesses and encourages large corporations to subcontract or team with minority and disadvantaged businesses. Tlingit Haida identified base operations and logistics, and we've expanded to IT because these were the contracting opportunities that provided consistent contract funding opportunities with low capital requirements for entry into the business. Thank you.
Thank you, Will. And while we're on that, for those of us who don't already know, could you give us a breakdown on what a subsidiary is, how it operates in general, and then how it operates specific to our business?
Sure. So as I mentioned, Roald, the THTBC is a federally chartered tribal corporation wholly owned by Tlingit and Haida. It's an arm of the tribe or a political subdivision of the tribe. It enjoys the rights, privileges, and immunities of the tribal sovereign, which is important in limiting recourse for any liabilities from its business operations to any of the assets or treasury of Tlingit and Haida. So as THTBC is a holding company, and it charters subsidiaries beneath it that answer to the holding company to actually operate or perform under the contracts that we acquire. These subsidiaries are chartered under Tlingit and Haida Business Code, and we charter them as needed for the contracts that we compete for and are awarded, and then provision employees to those subsidiaries that are managed overall by the CEO, Mr. Richard Reinhardt, and the board of directors for Leaning Rock Water Corporation. So it's somewhat not unique to business operations overall, but there are some unique aspects of federal contracting that probably not the subject for this discussion, but that we effectively address through Leaning Rock, through Tlingit Haida Tribal Business Corporation and its subsidiaries that we form as needed. Thanks.
Thank you, Will. We appreciate that clarification as well. Richard, could you tell our viewers about the specific programs being used, starting with first the 8A Business Development Program and then the Hub Zone?
Sure, Roald. The SBA has several small business programs. Some are self-certified, and others, like the 8A and Hub Zone program, are certified by the Small Business Administration. The 8A program I'll talk about first is a business development program for disadvantaged businesses owned by socially and economically disadvantaged people. Tlingit Haida as a tribe qualifies as a disadvantaged group. So that is our first one. And the second, the Hub Zone program, awards work to companies in historically underutilized business zones. This isn't so much about who owns the company, it's more about where the company is located and where those workers actually live. THTBC has several subsidiaries certified in both programs. A third one I'd mentioned, and I know I saw a slide that we have several other programs, but a third significant one is the All Small Mentor Protege program. And we have dozens of mentor protege agreements with large prime contractors like Raytheon, Northrop Grumman, Leidos, and several others. These are all Fortune 500, multiple billion-dollar companies, and it kind of gives us a most favored nation status as far as working with them, and allows us to, in some cases, joint venture, and the joint venture to be considered a small business, which it could be quite advantageous. We think with the recent push from the Biden administration that we're going to see a lot of use of these programs in the coming years.
So THTBC requires capital to fund its operations and to grow its revenues. Will, can you talk a little bit about how THTBC manages its capital requirements?
Sure. So THTBC, we highly value contract opportunities that do not require large capital expenditures and that minimize expenditures prior to receipt of revenues from performance of the under the contract requirements. So by this, we're able to effectively manage our cash flow, which is our liquidity, our cash on hand, and at the same time, we're able to grow our contracts and revenues internally or organically, as some people say. So this means that we, because we focused on a type of business and contracts that don't require us to fund large capital expenditures like purchase of fixed assets or vehicles or the like. We don't have to have large amounts of cash on hand in order to take on a contract and to perform prior to receiving revenues or payments from performance, which can be a fairly extended period with federal contracting, under federal contracting. The real attraction to us is that contracts are effectively recurring revenues, and recurring revenues are highly valued by high-performing companies. THTBC contracts offer terms of several years, so with the opportunity to compete for renewal for another term. And so this is an equivalent of recurring revenues where we can depend on sustainable income for a longer duration and not have at risk extreme volatility on to our company, nor high capital demands on our balance sheet that we would otherwise have to seek debt, and debt costs additional expenditures, and we're able to keep that off our balance sheet by our approach and focusing on the type of businesses that we have.
Thank you, Will. So THTBC is a Native Alaskan tribally owned corporation. Can you tell us about some of the business accomplishments and the certifications?
Sure. As stated above, we're certified by the SBA as an 8A and hub zone company, or companies actually. I know you have a number of programs listed out on the next slide, and then I spoke about the Mentor Protege program. Another significant factor that has nothing to do with small business certifications is that we have several companies that have secret and top secret clearance. That is quite significant. And then we are also ISO 9001 certified. Those things, which speaks to like the quality that we operate under. Some of the accomplishments, I'd like to review some of our accomplishments. We've tripled the size of the company, and sometime next year we will have quadrupled it. We've expanded into new industries and diversified our source of revenue. We've won hundreds of millions of dollars of prime contracts in addition to hundreds of millions in subcontracts. We bid billions of dollars worth of work each year. We have built a strong backlog without any dependency on any single contract. We have won all of our recompetes on the major contracts that we've had to recompete. We've tripled our office space and we've tripled the size of our staff, adding a number of exceptional individuals. We've established relationships with many of the nation's largest prime contractors and entered into a dozen mentor proteges with those contractors. We've increased the number of agencies we work with. We've upgraded our IT system, our information technology backbone, buying new servers and a lot of other equipment, adding staff in IT. We've started 30 subsidiary companies. We've expanded internationally and become a truly global company. We've developed a best-in-class reputation. We generate excellent CPAR ratings. And perhaps most importantly, we've taken care of our employees and promoted from within. And we kept our people safe, most notably during the COVID pandemic.
That's great news, Richard, especially during this COVID pandemic. So THTBC, as you shared, is constantly growing business and continues to team up with other businesses, creating jobs and opportunities for our people. Can you talk, Richard, about some of the types of work that you've done in the past and some of the types of occupations you're going to be needing and some of the locations of this work?
Sure. Most of our people work in facilities maintenance and base operations support services. However, information technology services has been our fastest growing area with over 400 professional staff today. We also perform logistics training and other services. I'd like to kind of back up and first say that we don't just provide jobs, we create careers for our people. We recruit and hire the best, then we train them and provide professional development opportunities for them to grow with the company. Think about all the growth that we've had and how much more we have yet to achieve. This is really an exciting place to work. Right now, today, we have about 70 job openings, and that always, there's constantly been for at least the last 2 years, 50 to 70 jobs every day. In IT, we're hiring computer operators, system engineering technicians, cybersecurity specialists, senior network engineers, senior software engineers, and more. In facility support services, we are currently looking for heavy equipment mechanics, locksmiths, licensed journeyman electricians, power plant mechanics, as well as custodians, ground workers, and general laborers. We also have openings for project managers, quality managers, office managers, program managers, business development associates, safety officers, and more. These change daily. At times, we also need accountants, HR recruiters and professionals, and even rocket scientists. As stated above, we're in 20 different states and 4 countries. Our biggest contracts are in Colorado, Florida, and South Carolina. We have corporate offices in Virginia, Texas, Colorado, and Washington. Internationally, we're in the Caribbean, Central America, and South Pacific.
Thank you, Richard. Did the COVID-19 pandemic have a negative effect on the company? And what were some of the challenges that you faced and how did you overcome them?
As a result of COVID, there were delays in solicitation release dates and contract award dates. However, most importantly, during the COVID crisis, THTBC has kept its employees safe. On average, less than 0.5% of the company's employees tested positive at any one time. Remember, we've had 1,400 to 1,500 employees. With the exception of one part-time worker who likely contracted the virus away from our job site, at no time did we have any employees hospitalized, and we experienced 0 deaths. All this was a result of hard work on the part of our entire team. Protocols were put in place and employees followed them. Our supply department miraculously located personal protection equipment in instances where our competitors could find none. Meanwhile, the company grew. THTBC recorded its highest revenue in the company's history. Profits and backlog also grew, which is remarkable in the COVID year.
I appreciate hearing that even in the middle of a pandemic that you ended up better off on the other side. And we appreciate all the hard work of our staff in our subsidiary in THTBC. So a question, could you talk about the future goals for THTBC growth?
Sure. Real briefly, THTBC reached $100 million annual revenue in 2019. Remember, we started from zero, and we were around 100. We will be around 170 million this year, and we expect to exceed 200 million annual run rate within the next 12 months. Our goal is to reach 500 million in annual revenue in the next 5 years.
Can you also talk about the record of THTBC in meeting its financial projections?
Sure. Since the acquisition of Kira, we've met all our financial goals. We've been profitable every month. We've paid off all our long-term debt, and we are starting to make distributions to our shareholders on schedule as planned.
That's great to hear. Can you tell us a little bit about your plans? You began to talk about the jobs that are available, but could you tell us about your plans for tribal citizen hire, specifically for the executive team?
Yes. First, we prefer to hire talented and promising individuals early in their career. Then we can train and develop them in our company culture. We like to have them learn our 5 principles, which, by the way, I have them like right here on my wall, and everybody has them at their desk or nearby. First one is always tell the truth. The second is none of us are as smart as all of us. And the third is we create careers rather than jobs. Fourth, we share information and keep everyone fully informed. And fifth, our business plans and operational practices are based on objective metrics. We measure, track, approve, adapt. THTBC is a corporation built on a foundation of principles and strives for excellence in all we do. We employ tactics and strategies to ensure continued growth and pride ourselves on hiring the best-in-class executives and employees to ensure and reach and exceed our goals. We treat each other with dignity and respect. We prioritize, document, double-check, learn and train to stay ahead of our competition and create career paths rather than jobs, as stated above. As the company continues to grow at a steady yet satisfying rate, we provide the best possible training for current and future employees to ensure we retain and recruit top industry talent. We hire the best in the business and ensure success by demanding top quality service from everyone. If this sounds interesting to you, I encourage you to go to our website, check out our open positions. If you see something that you like, you can, and you're qualified, please give me a call or contact our HR department. Their contact information is on the website. The website is THTBC.com, or you can go Kira, K-I-R-A, Kira.com, go to the careers or job page. A bunch of those jobs I talked about earlier, they're all listed out there today, and all the contact, and there it is on the screen, THTBC.com/jobs. There's always a lot of really good jobs.
So, Will, we heard THTBC is hiring. And what do you hope to achieve through tribal citizen development?
Well, our hopes are to provide opportunity, not just to earn revenues for Tlingit Haida that we can put to the benefit of our tribal citizens and to assist in the operation of our federal programs. As you know, Roald, it's not free to operate federal Indian programs. There is typically a non-federal share, which means a tribal match, or other expense that is not assumed by our federal partners, that in fact Tlingit Haida must fund through its own revenues or through its own treasury. And so there's an imperative to make sustainable all of the programs that we put in place. But we've gone beyond that. President Peterson's, one of his mottos is to meet our tribal citizens where they're at. And where they're at is not always answered by a federal Indian program. There are things that we think we can do certainly better than federal employees, but there are some things that we can do that are not even contemplated by federal programs and policy. So on one hand, the revenues are going to support those services that we can deliver to our tribal citizens where they're at, wherever they are at. But number two, in doing that, we can provide opportunities for not just employment, but as Richard Reinhardt said, creating careers and career advancement. There were the days in the past of our grandparents and our parents, if we're old enough like me, to remember companies where you would progress through the company, through different locations and through different job responsibilities and titles, and work your way up in career advancement with the same organization. That pretty much went by the wayside in many ways. But here we have an opportunity with the what, as you can see from the depiction of the contract sites where THTBC and its subsidiaries perform work, far-flung locations that are yet associated mostly with military commands that are safe and reasonable places to reside and to work, and to not just ply your trade, but also offer you career advancement so you can increase your opportunity by working with Tlingit Haida and its THTBC and subsidiaries. So there is not, it's very difficult to have 10 machinists in Huna or 5 electricians in Kasan. For those folks with the skill sets and the willingness to learn new skill sets, this is an opportunity for career advancement where they can provide for their families, for themselves, but as well to make choices about where they want to work and in what job types they want to work, and still providing career advancement. So we have other enterprises under Tlingit Haida that are local, that are in Juneau, that are in Southeast Alaska. But this gives us the opportunity right now for a more diverse type of occupations that with high pay and opportunity for advancement. So I think it works really well with the plans and policies of Tlingit Haida to leverage the career opportunities presented by THTBC. Thank you.
Thank you, Will. So a question for both of you. Are there any other important accomplishments you'd like to share with our viewers, or not just accomplishments, but goals for the next year?
Sure. There are many additional accomplishments that create value that's not listed on our balance sheet. The value of the company's brand name, past performance, the top secret security clearance, the hundreds of millions of dollars that we have in our backlog are all off balance sheet and things you don't see financially, hidden extra value. Results for last year were excellent, and 2021 is off to a good start. The future continues to look promising. The rate of growth in revenue and profits continue to trend upward. The company's robust and growing backlog of work would indicate that this is likely to continue. Our future is bright. And then I want to express on behalf of our entire executive team, we're grateful to the board and to our board and the executive council for their support. We recognize the value of a stable board providing consistent direction. Unlike most boards that concern themselves with short-term results, our board's vision and focus on the long-term consistency and discipline have served as the bedrock for THTBC's success to date. Our executives fully understand that we could not have accomplished all that we have without the board and EC support. Equally important, the board and executive council actions have resulted in a tremendous amount of company loyalty and goodwill among our management team. They're all extremely excited about starting to pay dividends to the company's owners, and they fully recognize the value these unrestricted funds will have for all members of the tribe. They're honored to work for this board, executive council, and the company's ultimate owners.
Sure.
Go ahead.
I'll just add that I think it's important to maintain within our perspective that THTBC is a startup. So it wasn't, didn't have funds for startup. What we began with was a concept that we needed, that Tlingit Haida needed to earn enterprise revenues unencumbered by restrictions on use of funds for the benefit of our tribal citizens, and at the same time provide employment to our citizens as well, which we just described. And we, with the expertise of those that contributed, President Peterson, I mentioned his experience, Richard Reinhardt's experience, others who were members of the board at that time, we all contributed to developing a business model, and which we've described in today's discussion. That business model is based on based on those attributes of business development, which were key to our success. And included in that was a very rigorous due diligence process where we identified, gathered information, and made decisions based on that business model and the due diligence that informed the model. Without that, it's very difficult to start up and succeed in a business. Most businesses fail at a very high percentage. And those that are a going concern for a number of years fail after that at a very high percentage. We are very confident in the success of this business because we stuck to the business model. We, as Richard said, with the 5 items in the motto, is the important one was tell the truth. We always told ourselves the truth about the data. It wasn't wishful thinking. It wasn't that we hoped things would turn out right. It was looking at the data and making decisions based on that. That's really incredibly important. As a startup, again, we had an investment from the Tlingit Haida Trust Fund, and we took on debt. And through our performance, we're able to retire that acquisition debt and begin paying dividends to back to Tlingit Haida in the very near term. So that's, I think, a record of accomplishment that we will keep applying to THTBC, but as well, Tlingit Haida, because of our growing needs of our community and the growing size of our community, frankly, of our tribal population, we'll be developing other businesses. We've already begun with Sacred Grounds and Sacred Shine and other endeavors around Southeast, but there will be other business acquisitions. And frankly, that may well turn out to be of similar size and potential as THTBC has done with Kira and its subsidiaries. So we need to keep going. We need to keep applying this model and process to ensure the best chance of our success. But it also means that we are taking every action, every measure that we can to ensure that we can actually meet the needs of our tribal citizens. And again, as Richard did, I want to emphasize that it was only through the support of the Tribal Assembly in its annual sessions and the Executive Council that we have the authority to proceed, and their support for the business model established was critical in importance. And finally, I also, again, wish to address the dedication and the commitment of the board and our employees, and particularly, again, our outside directors, Ronald Fulgamon and Janet Oliver, who continually talk to us about their dedication to serving the interest of Tlingit Haida and its tribal citizens, and our key executives and employees all the way down to the base level where they're at work in their trades, who we visited. Richard and I have visited for, I remember a Christmas party we had at one command, and to a man and to a woman, when you talk to them, they cite that they are working for the interest of a native tribe to be one of the reasons that they're working for THTBC, and why there's part of the reason they're so dedicated to this. And so we continually seek to find ways to express our gratitude to our executives and our employees for their hard work and for their dedication to our best interests that they serve, and is a substantial reason for our success. So thank you, Roel.
Thank you, Will. And I think that's a great way to wind up the presentation today. I appreciate both of our presenters, Richard, you, and Will, for explaining Tlingit Haida Tribal Business Corporation and sharing a little bit with us today about the successes of this startup organization as it's now maturing or beginning to mature, and we're starting to see some revenues coming back into the tribe from that hard work. We'd like to now open it up for questions from our tribal citizens and friends. If you have a question, please type your comment into the section that is below, and we'd be happy to try to answer as many of these as we possibly can. So I would like to start with the first question that Tommy G asks, when does Kira meet again? And how do we request proposals to be considered by Kira? Will Kira vote in tribal citizens to their board? And how many employees are currently from Alaska or are tribal citizens? And how many are non-native? So that's a lot of questions in one, and I can break those down one by one if that would be helpful, Richard and Will.
Let me try to start answering a couple of them. We don't have a lot of tribal citizens, and that is one of the reasons that I'm here today, is to appeal to get people applying. People are not applying, even though we try and we advertise and we've made mention many times. We're not getting a lot of applicants. So there are not a lot of tribal citizens. How many are from Alaska? We have a dozen to 2 dozen. I'm going to say 20 employees in Alaska, all in Juneau. And 95% of those are tribal citizens. What are some of the, he had a lot of questions there, so I was trying to catch all those. We meet quarterly. He was asking when we meet. It is just a board meeting of our board. I report to the executive council monthly. The report is usually fairly brief. There's not a lot that changes from month to month. Quarter to quarter, there's probably a little bit more. And then I report to Tribal Assembly, which is a more detailed report that everyone receives there.
So one of Tommy's questions is, will Kira vote in tribal citizens to their board?
Okay, so we do have a majority of tribal citizens on our board. The other non-tribal members on the board are on there as an advantage to THTBC in what they bring to the company and in their knowledge and their relationships that they have.
Thank you, Richard. Another question in that same group is, how do we request proposals to be considered by Kira?
I am not really sure what that even means. We work proposals constantly. I have a whole proposal department. We are doing proposals to the government to perform work for the federal government, but I'm not sure what else. Maybe you can help me. I'm not sure what he's asking.
We'll see if he can add a little bit more. I'm assuming that he would be interested in making proposals to Kira for services. So there maybe perhaps just a connection with you, Richard, would be an excellent opportunity get that question answered a little more in depth. With
Okay.
that, let me move on to the next question. And this is a little bit longer, but let me just say that Carla says, first, I want to say that I'm very proud of the hard work and accomplishments of THTBC and Kira. Simply amazing. But if I may, I'd like to ask about the revenues generated from our enterprises. After any overhead and associated programmatic costs, how are the revenues being applied towards functions and operations of Tlingit Haida as a whole? Is any portion funneled to specific programs operated by the tribe? Is any portion used to supplement some of the federal government funded social services programs administered by the tribe, specifically to address tribal citizens who do not meet eligibility criteria contained in 25 CFR? If not, why or why not is there a plan to implement such supplements? Great question. And I think, Will, you did address some of this, but perhaps you'd like to expound on it.
Sure. So I think the core of the question is about about profit returned from THTBC to Tlingit and Haida. So the 5-year plan for under our business model was that that THTBC would retire its acquisition debt and other expenses in formation and development of its enterprises. And at the end of that 5-year period, start returning profit or dividend back to Tlingit and Haida. So we are meeting our model. This is the end of our, I think essentially the end of our 5th full year of operation. There will be a dividend of return from THTBC to Tlingit Haida that needs to be reviewed by and approved by the Executive Council. But there is in our business policy a requirement that if the THTBC board certifies that there is sufficient revenues for a payment of dividend to Tlingit Haida, that it will be at least a minimum of 60% of those available funds that would be returned. And once those funds are paid as net profit or dividend by THTBC to Tlingit Haida, then there's a policy established by the Executive Council and by the Tribal Assembly for disposition of those funds. The only difference is that those funds are enterprise funds. They are unencumbered by use of funds restrictions that otherwise go with funds or proceeds from federal Indian program allocations or distributions to Tlingit Haida from our federal or partners or from the state government. But that policy is set up by the Executive Council at the leadership of the President and the Tribal Assembly.
Thank you, Will. I do see on the additional questions from Tommy, he said those questions can be answered later, but he's thankful for the thorough answers that are being provided. So I'd like to move on to a question from Cynthia, who's saying, can you work at home with a computer?
There are some positions that may be possible. Most of our positions, that's not, by far and away. For example, of over 1,400 employees, I have about 70 office administrative positions that can fall into that category. Most of the rest of them are site specific, and it's required by the contract that they're on site performing the work on site. We had some temporary exemption during COVID, but that is not going to be a long-term continuation.
Thank you for that answer. Sonia is asking, does TARO apply to hiring?
I don't think we have it. Do we have a tarot? I'm not even aware of that. Maybe Will could help out with that one.
Yeah, so because THTBC is a political subdivision or arm of the tribe, the tribal ordinance we've not applied to Tlingit Haida because it would be in conflict with the contractual requirements. It really is not, doesn't provide any synergy with the kind of solicitations that we have to respond to by federal Defense Department agencies that are seeking to hire firms like THTBC and Kira to perform the activities described under the solicitation. So what the tarot really applies to is assessing a fee or some kind of remuneration or compensation by firms for developing classes of employees for under the tribe as a benefit for doing business with the tribe. The tribe's enterprises are almost, I think substantially, I can't think of one that isn't 100% owned by the tribe. So we don't have other partners to assess a tarot fee against. So at this point, it's not really applicable unless we were to take on firms that would be subject to that type of tarot assessment.
Thank you, Will. A question from Erica, who's asking, are there any opportunities in the Seattle area?
Not at this time. We are looking for opportunities in the Northwest, Washington State in particular. There are a number of large government contracts here. We don't have any of them at this time. They may not actually be Seattle. It could be out in Kitsap County, could be over in the Hanford area. There are very few inside Seattle itself.
Thank you, Richard. The next question is from Barbara, and she's asking about housing. Housing or lack of housing has a lot to do with people applying for jobs. Are there any collaborative efforts with Tlingit and Haida Regional Housing Authority on any options for people wanting to work for THTBC?
None that I'm aware of. First of all, we haven't had the applicants. If we had an applicant that said, I'm interested in this job, but I don't know about housing, maybe we could look into that. I really can't comment on what tribal housing could do in Florida or Colorado or some other state or some other country.
Well, thank you for that, Richard. I think we've reached the end of our questions today, and that also brings us to the end of the hour. So thank you for all our guests who've been joining us today for this presentation. I've been waiting for this presentation, and I'm very excited to be moderating it on Tlingit and Haida Tribal Business Corporation. As we learn about our tribe, our tribal programs and enterprises, this is a great way of presenting the information and engaging with our citizens no matter where you live, so that we can reach out and understand what's available through our tribe. As always, as we close, we have the random drawing prizes, which have been texted to me. And so I can let you know who the winners are. So the door prize winners today for the Hydro Flask is Mallory Jade. The Blueberry Picking Bucket is Mari West, and the David Boxley t-shirt is Sylvia Condora. So congratulations to our door prize winners. I didn't see my name on there, so unfortunately I didn't make it. But also a big thank you to our sponsors, Sacred Ground, Smokehouse Catering, Sacred Shine, and the Elizabeth Paradovich Hall that is open up again. And so it's very exciting to have our offices open, and we can see our citizens and our clients again. So thank you for joining us. We hope that you enjoyed it and you learned something today about our tribe's activities, our programs, and our services. And don't forget to check out our next lunchtime chat. We're working on the program right now. We wish you all a wonderful rest of the week. House Dong King Song. We'll see you all again.
Sheesh.
How are we going to sheesh?